It's called Bitcoin. For some, it's a new age payment system. For others, the virtual currency is totally confusing. Claire finds out more about Bitcoin and whether it's going to make more strides into our financial affairs.
A defining aspect of civilization was the creation of currency, whether it be shells, spices, gold or paper. Money is such an integral part of society, yet its true nature remains a mystery. As the rand continues its slow path of recovery, more people are transacting in a commodity of the future, Bitcoin. The premise of Bitcoin can be tricky to explain. Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency, virtual, that exists digitally. While governments make more money by printing at the mint, Bitcoins are extracted from cyberspace the way gold is extracted from the earth. It has no central authority, there's no delay in sending money, and the transaction fees cost cents. It's an open source technology that has sprouted hundreds of clones and is forcing financial institutions to re-examine their methodologies. Technology has been hailed as the great leveler. Could Bitcoin even the playing field even further?
Technology is a leveler because it takes out the role of the middleman, it takes out the role of governments, it takes out the role of big corporations because it empowers people.
Ian Merrington is CEO of the Cape Innovation and Technology Initiative.
First thing we've seen with the internet is the spread of knowledge, the ability to self-educate. One can find out anything one wants to know, one can get the truth. And now as the internet moves into an internet of value with potentially currency, Bitcoin being a great example, what stops people trading from a phone to phone, person to person, what's commonly called peer-to-peer? Again, removes the need for a bank. So technology is very empowering and very enabling and obviously very transformative.
Probably because it works outside of government regulation and subverts the traditional banking system, Bitcoin has been outlawed in some countries around the world and heavily frowned upon by others. Virtual currencies are currently unregulated in South Africa. In a joint statement issued by the Financial Intelligence Centre, National Treasury, the South African Reserve Bank and the South African Revenue Service, they urged caution due to the high degree of anonymity and that transactions are irreversible. The concept of Bitcoin was first published in 2008 by an unknown person using the pseudonym Satoshi Nakamoto, and the first Bitcoin software was released the following year. After the release of the software, he participated with others on the project via mailing lists until he finally began to fade from the community toward the end of 2010. Nakamoto worked with people on the open source team, but took care never to reveal anything personal about himself, and the last anyone heard from him was in the spring of 2011, when he said that he had to move on to other things. But where do Bitcoins come from? Locally, Bitcoins can be bought for money through exchanges, as it's treated as a commodity rather than a straightforward currency. One of these exchanges is BitX, based in Cape Town. Karel van Wyk is one of the founders of the company. What does BitX do?
Our core focus is making it safe and simple for the individual to store their Bitcoin, to send Bitcoin, to spend their Bitcoin, as well as convert their Bitcoin to local currency and back.
Karel, how is a Bitcoin transaction different from a regular credit card or electronic transaction?
I think Bitcoin transactions are faster and cheaper. But specifically as a customer, it's safer because you don't have to provide your credit card with any personal information. And as a merchant, there's also no fraud risk if you accept a payment with at least one confirmation. And as well as access to a wide audience of people with Bitcoin, you can accept payment from anybody in the world that has a Bitcoin wallet.
Exchanges are made through wallet software rather than the traditional wallet in your back pocket. Like a commodity, the monetary value of your Bitcoin is set entirely by the supply and demand of the market. With nothing to hold in your hand, Bitcoin's value might seem indecipherable, and as a newer concept, it does tend to fluctuate. It surged in November 2013 when the value topped $1,200 and was briefly worth more than an ounce of gold. It then tumbled to 20% of its value, and on November 1st, 2015, a single Bitcoin was worth $325, and as of April, the value topped $450. And again, like gold, the number of Bitcoin is finite, capped at 21 million. The production rate is scheduled to halve every 4 years to ensure that a value of Bitcoin is not lost. At the current rate of production, this means that supply will run out in 2140. As it stands today, over a century before the deadline, roughly 64% of Bitcoin remain unused in their respective accounts, appreciating and depreciating with time. I want to know how you can send me money.
Right, so you click on the receive button so I can see your address. I'll scan the code. And then, because I'm nice, I'm going to send you 20 rands.
Thank you.
And from my side, it's done. And then you can see there.
Incoming Bitcoin transaction.
Right.
And is it immediate? Do I have it now?
Right,
or?
so you receive it immediately, but you can only spend it after 30 minutes.
Currently, there are over 100,000 merchants worldwide that accept Bitcoin, everything from groceries to airtime and beyond. Perhaps the most high-profile acceptor of the currency is Virgin Galactic. Pay for your futuristic journey with futuristic money. Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are also more than just virtual money. The monetary aspect is just the tip of the iceberg. The real power lies in the open public ledger that is distributed across the network that is transparent. It is called the blockchain. In the blockchain, all transactions are logged, including the time, date, participants, and amount of every single transaction. Each node in the network owns a full copy of the blockchain. On the basis of complicated mathematical principles, the transactions are verified by the so-called Bitcoin miners who maintain the ledger. The mathematical principles also ensure that these nodes automatically and continuously agree about the current state of the ledger and every transaction in it. If anyone tries to corrupt a transaction, the nodes will not arrive at a consensus and will refuse to incorporate the transaction in the blockchain, so every transaction is public. It's almost as if there's a notary present for every transaction.
It's the next wave of innovation. I think we've seen a lot of established businesses being disrupted recently by innovation. The travel industry comes to mind. When last did you use your travel agent to book a flight? We're seeing what's happening with Airbnb. We're seeing what's happened with Uber. And effectively, cryptocurrency and digital currency, such as Bitcoin, really is just innovation using a tech platform.
The ledger doesn't care if the Bitcoin represents a certain amount of euros or dollars or anything else of value or property for that matter. Users can decide for themselves what a unit of Bitcoin represents. Bitcoin is divisible in 100 million units, and each unit is individually identifiable and programmable. This means users can assign properties to each unit. Users can program a unit to represent a euro cent or a share in a company, a kilowatt hour of energy, or a digital certificate of ownership. Because of this, Bitcoin is much more than simply money and payments. A Bitcoin can represent many kinds of property. Most people would associate Bitcoin with illegal activities and anonymous exchanges, but that isn't the case. Jonathan Levine is a co-founder at Chainalysis, a company that looks at what exchanges are happening on the blockchain.
So the interesting thing about Bitcoin compared to traditional financial systems is that you have one financial ledger. So every transaction is recorded in the same ledger, and each one of those participants, so the Bitcoin businesses, the banks, and the government regulators, all have access to the same transactional information. And when that happens, everyone can be proactive in investigations. It's no longer the case that only the Bitcoin business can report suspicious activity to the regulator. Now the regulator can also ask questions of the Bitcoin business to say, listen, I saw this transaction, looked a little bit high, why wasn't it reported?
So then does your service also provide legitimacy to cryptocurrency?
If you think about it in the traditional banking context, there's a lot of emphasis putting on preventing money laundering, knowing your customer well, and essentially assessing the risk of every customer that you do business with. And in the Bitcoin circle, what happened originally was people couldn't know what types of activity their customers were doing with their Bitcoins. And then what we do is we actually analyze all the bad activity. So I find out, cybercrime and drug trafficking and stuff like that Bitcoin gets used for, and I can alert services based on whether they're about to do business with those types of activity, and they can then report it in the same way that they do it in the traditional financial world.
How receptive have traditional banks been to Bitcoin?
In general, I think when it comes to technology, banks move quite slowly, but we think they'll get there in the end. I don't think there is a big bank at the moment that doesn't have a team that's working on blockchain and investigating it and understanding what it's about. So I do think the banks are doing the responsible thing to at least understand the technology.
Whether you understand it or not, the face of money has forever been changed. Could this be a case of adapt or die?
I think just take note of the growing momentum behind it, and it might be good for everybody to just have a little bit of Bitcoin to say, okay, I'm a part of this.